battery cage actually limits the bird's capacity, especially around freedom to express its natural behavior. But beyond that, it also has some very serious negative consequences on the bird itself and then ultimately onto the consumer, and I'll explain as we go along. The first thing is that when producers talk about battery cage system being very efficient, they're comparing battery cage system with a poor production system, and that then is valid. But when you're comparing battery cage systems with high welfare production systems, then you find that battery cage systems underperforms because the bird is not being given its optimal capacity to produce. If the bird is enclosed in a small space, it can't do what it's naturally supposed to do. It can't flap its wings, it can't stretch. That cage, there are 3 or 5 of them. Essentially what then happens is you're ending up with a very stressed animal. That stressed animal will not produce optimally. It's just like you and I. When we are sick, our production or our optimal capacity to work optimally is reduced. And that's the first thing that you notice. But also because of the battery cage system, that animal does not have an opportunity to stretch. That animal does not have an opportunity to exercise its legs. And essentially what we're finding out is that that animal ends up with a very weak leg. And if you talk to the people who buy old hens, they will quickly tell you that they even avoid buying birds from spent hens from battery cage systems because those animals will end up with very brittle legs that can break easily when you're transporting them to the market. And so that's what we're looking at holistically. But the question I think we need to pose and ask for ourselves beyond the welfare considerations, because I also talked about animal welfare is not for the sake of the animal only, it's critical, but also about our production system. Is battery cage system sustainable? And why is it that the rest of the world is moving away from battery cage systems? And those are some of the things we need to ask ourselves. It's because the consumer is beginning to say that, no, we are not just going to use animals as a factory to produce eggs without caring about that animal. In fact, a great man called Mahatma Gandhi said that you can know the level of greatness of a nation by just looking at how they treat animals. So if you're enclosing animals in small spaces for long durations of time and refusing to allow them to have their freedoms, then are we a great nation? And those are some of the challenging things. Beyond that, it has also been shown by research that when animals, layers specifically, are able to walk out, enjoy some of the sun, you end up with a better quality egg because there are things, there are certain nutritive values that come from that exposure to sunlight. And that is why in certain jurisdictions now, it's a requirement that animals should also have some natural periods of natural sunlight because there are things that come through that process. So holistically, there are things we are looking at and they are interesting things. I think for us as Kenyans, the other thing that we need to look at is when big retailers are beginning to say, we will not accept battery cage systems. Are we then supporting a system that is locking our producers out of high-value markets? And remember, high-value markets does not mean I have to export. It's that supermarket or that fast food restaurant that is sitting in Nairobi or in Mombasa or in Kampala and is demanding these standards and saying that for you to supply into this production, into this retailer, this is our requirement. And part of the requirement is that the chicken must come from, the egg must come from a system that is not battery caged. And so I think those are the things, the discussions around it. I think we need to work with the farming community, and I know that one of those retailers has even said that they're phasing out gradually. They're not saying it's done immediately. It's a gradual phase out. And from where I sit, I know globally we are saying that battery cage systems should be phased out by 2030. Are we prepared as a country to go through that process, or are we burying our heads in the sand and saying it's okay, this works for the farmer, let's work with it? I think there are things that we need to look around that.